Coming to cross country this afternoon?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I'm gonna be there for the first time. Uh, Play a sound. Share my screen. And let's rock and roll. All right, guys. So hope everybody did good on the cardio test. Still have a couple people at home that need to finish that cardio test. So go knock that out. Um, what we're going to do this week's a little bit different because I don't have a test schedule for this unit, but it is essential that you stick with me and understand this unit because it's over half of the body when we get into gross dissection. Um, so starting next Tuesday, I think I've talked to just about everybody who would normally be here. We have the 4 people in front of me right now, plus Kaya and Mackenzie. And then I'm assuming the other 4 students are going to be virtual only. If you, with those 6 students, we're going to stay in class every day starting next Tuesday for 2 weeks. That way I can assign each of you your own cat and we can work on about an 8-day or so dissection. We will not have a lab practical exam, but it'll still give you the opportunity to do the full dissection and be able to find all the stuff and to get the experience under your belt for the future. For my folks that are at home, let me know if you got any ideas. I'm gonna give you guys something, an alternative assignment on that time. If you have any ideas, just let me know. Um, but yeah, Tuesday next week until the Friday of before Halloween, I want 100% attendance if possible during that time for my folks that are coming face to face. So to do that, we've already talked about the most of the thorax anatomy. We haven't talked about the functions of the lungs, but the lungs are pretty self-explanatory. But we need to talk about the abdomen, and the majority of what's filling up the abdomen is your digestive system and your digestive organs. And so that's what the purpose of these next 2 or 3 days are going to be this week. So we'll start this today. If we don't finish today, we'll finish tomorrow, and then Friday I'll kind of give an introduction for everything you need to expect when you come in on Tuesday for our big dissection. Any questions? All right, let's have some fun with some digestive system. So digestive system, first off, I don't like the name because digestion is not the goal. Digestion is literally taking big things and making them small things. That's digestion. And that's not the goal of the digestive system. Really, it is only part of what it does. What's the goal of the digestive system?
Breaking the materials you need throughout the body.
To get nutrients in the body. Yeah, absolutely. So the goal of the digestive system isn't even digestion. You can have a successful digestive system with no digestion. My wife's doing it right now. My wife had a gastric sleeve surgery last Monday, week ago last Monday. So she's at 10 days or so out from her surgery. And since then, she has been on a liquids only diet. On a liquids only diet, your body needs to do no digestion because everything is already in the absorbable materials. And you have people at the hospital who can't swallow, people who are on ventilators who get fed via G tubes that go directly into their digestive system. They don't need to digest. And so I want to start off with that idea there. It's like digestion is what's going to start out in our body with the digestive system, but the system's purpose is absorption. I guess absorptive system doesn't sound very good. And so that's why they kind of went that way. But you got 2 main groups of organs in the digestive system. You have the alimentary canal, also known as the GI tract, also known as the gut. We talked about this at the beginning of the year when we talked about coverings. We talked about how the body is set up with open spaces. I can't. There's cavities, hollow cavities. But the GI tract, from an immune system standpoint, is outside of your body. You have this continuous tube from your mouth through your body to your anus that, from an immune system standpoint, is literally outside of your body. That's why you can have this dangerous E. coli in your stomach that aids with digestion, but would kill you if it was in your bloodstream. That's a pretty wild little deal there. But the alimentary canal is what we usually think of as the digestive system, but you also have accessory organs, things that help the digestive system that aren't in the gut. Things like the pancreas and the gallbladder, working right there with the gallbladder, the liver. Okay, all of those things those are your big three, but you can also put some smaller guys in there, probably some hormone guys in there as well. All right. So looking at processes that the digestive system does. Ingestion, pretty self-explanatory, putting food in your mouth. Something I'm going to talk about in a second. As soon as food crosses your front teeth and goes into your mouth, it is no longer food. It is a bolus. B-O-L-U-S. Bolus is any food that is in your mouth. Technically, any food that from your mouth to your stomach is a bolus. Okay? You have mechanical digestion. That is physical changes. If you go back to chemistry class, physical changes. Remember the difference between physical change and chemical change? Physical change would be doing what to your hair? Cutting it. And a chemical change would be burning it. Okay? So mechanical digestion would be chopping up your food, segmenting your food, getting into pieces, churning it, mixing it, dissolving it with your saliva is still mechanical digestion. Okay? But then you're also at the same time doing chemical digestion, where you are undergoing chemical reactions, which actually start in your mouth. We'll get there in a second. To chemically break down your food. When you're throwing acid at your food, the acid is undergoing a chemical change. It's a chemical reaction that's breaking down those food particles. Propulsion is pretty straightforward. Two big parts of propulsion: swallowing to get it started, and then once you get it started, you get that smooth muscle, that peristalsis, that squeezing motion, that things are just kind of blob through the digestive system. Then the big part, what we're all here for, is absorption. Getting the nutrients into your body. Getting the nutrients from the food into your body to be able to, what nutrient, if you had to only get one chemical from your food, what's the one chemical we're trying to get? If you could only get one chemical from your food for the rest of your life, you wouldn't be very healthy, but you could live. What would it be? Less specific. Carbon is a part of it.
Proteins?
You need proteins for life, but you're gonna live quite a while without adding proteins to your diet.
Fiber.
What think about respiration, guys?
Oxygen?
We're breathing in oxygen. We're not eating oxygen.
No.
But we're on the right track. To stay alive, you need oxygen and
ATP.
to make the ATP, you need oxygen and glucose, C6H12O6. If you can only get one compound from your food, glucose. That's why if you want to lose weight, what do you cut from your diet? Carbs, aka glucose, because that instead tells your body to start eating your fat reserves. That's why you lose weight when you go to low carb diet. It's also why a low carb diet is very dangerous if you're a skinny person, because you have no fat reserves to go on. Okay? All right. So absorption, we'll talk about more in a second. Then resorption. Resorption is what happens, and it's also a very, very important process of the digestive system, because from the time you put food into your mouth to the time it gets to your large intestine, you're shooting water at the food. So in your mouth, you shoot water at the food to mechanically digest it, to dissolve it. In your stomach, you shoot water in your food, because if you ever look at acid, it's going to be a liquid form because it's not stable enough to be by itself. It's not stable enough to be solid. It's going to be dissolved in the water. So when you shoot hydrochloric acid in your stomach, you're not shooting hydrochloric acid like salt particles at your food, you're shooting hydrochloric acid mixed with water. And so you're shooting water at the food in your mouth, you're shooting water at your food in your stomach, even your pancreatic juices and your bile is got water in it. You got to get that water back. You don't drink enough water to keep up with your digestive processes. And so we got to recycle that water. And that's the purpose of our large intestine that we'll get to in a second. You got to get the water back so that you don't dehydrate. And then finally, defecation, getting rid of the unused wastes. Okay? All right, so let's go through the order. Starting off in the mouth. I just put the boundaries up here just so we can see some anatomical terms. Lips, we understand. Cheeks, we understand. Palate.
Tongue.
What is palate? Not tongue is the bottom. Palate's the top. Yep. Tongue is at the bottom. Palate's at the top. Okay. And you're doing for mixing, for chewing. Obviously, helps for speech. That's not what we're talking about, but it's there. Food in the mouth is called a bolus. Saliva is going to moisten the food and dissolve it, but it also starts chemical digestion. Chemical digestion actually begins in your mouth. You don't have to wait till you get to your stomach for chemical digestion. So your saliva contains amylase. Amylase is going to break down starches. Amylase, you know, is a what? Think back to biology class.
Enzyme.
Very good. Enzyme. ASE, it's an enzyme. It's going to facilitate the chemical reaction that breaks down starches. Okay, this is a really cool experiment that you can do on your own. You don't even need anything from my class to do this experiment. Get you some plain, maybe even stale a little bit, no taste bread, just the plainest bread you can find, not sweet bread, not Hawaiian bread, not the nice rolls your grandmama made, plain bread with very little taste. Eat some of it, chew it up, but don't swallow. Chew the bread as if it were a piece of chewing gum and just keep it in your mouth, keep chewing it. The taste will change. The taste will change from this starchy, bready, cardboardy, nothing flavor and become sweet. It'll become more sweet the longer you keep it in your mouth, the longer you let that amylase work and break down those starches. So next time you're eating a piece of bread, try it out. A really neat little experiment you can do. But what you're doing is you're seeing your amylase work. Another word that we've already talked about before, mastication. We talked about that with cranial nerve 5. Muscles of mastication, for that cranial nerve is another word for chewing. All right, once you are done with what's going on in your mouth, you're going to undergo deglutition. Deglutition is the fancy word for swallowing that we probably already said before because we talked about it when we talked about the, which nerve? Not hypoglossal, accessory, maybe a little bit. There's another one, glossopharyngeal. Glossopharyngeal nerve, which is 9, maybe? That sounds right. But yeah, cranial nerve, glossopharyngeal cranial nerve. It's going to help us with swallowing, deglutition. Swallowing is one of those weird things that begins with skeletal muscle and ends with smooth muscle. So like the first step is to trigger a swallow, you have to think about it, but then it just kind of goes through the process. And the smooth muscle takes over, and your esophagus, top third of your esophagus is skeletal muscle. The bottom 2/3 of your esophagus is smooth muscle. So once you get down past that point, the smooth muscle takes over. Yeah, pharynx is just another fancy way to say back of your throat, esophagus on down into your chest cavity. Rock and roll. Then we get to the stomach. One of the things we're going to talk about with a couple of our systems that we talk about is that the misconception of what people think is the most important system. It's like when we do let's pick on, we got boys in here, so let's pick on boys. We do the male reproductive system. And I say, what's the most important organ in the male reproductive system? Everybody says penis. Exactly. Okay. But they're wrong. What is the essential organ of the male reproductive system?
The brain.
I like the cut of your jib. I like that. That was nice, but no.
It's the most important of all the systems.
What's the most important organ in the male reproductive system? Not penis. Testes. Testes are because testes make testosterone. Testes make sperm. Testes are the male reproductive organ. The penis is just the delivery mechanism. Same thing kind of goes on here. If you ask somebody on the street what's the most important organ of the digestive system, they're going to say stomach. And they're wrong, because you can live with no stomach. A gastric bypass actually goes by pretty much your whole stomach. And you can live just fine without any stomach, because the most important organ in the digestive system is not the stomach, it's the small intestine. We'll get there in a second. But so let's deal with the stomach first. It's going to store food. It's going to digest the food. Now, it's kind of misleading, though, because even though it's not the most important organ in the digestive system, it is the most important organ for digestion. Because what we said, digestive system isn't about digestion. That's just the word that kind of has gone with it. Okay? So stomach, it's going to store food. It's going to digest the food. It changes the bolus. Once the bolus arrives in the stomach, you have this chewed up ball of food. And your stomach is going to take this chewed up ball of food and turn it into a gooey slime ball. And that gooey slime ball is called chyme. C-H-Y-M-E. Chyme is a way that the stomach can create the most absorption from your food by creating this sphere or blob, if you will, of easily absorbable material. If you have a whole bunch of little chunks, it's hard for your body to absorb it. If you have one solid spherical, blob, then it's easy for your body to just, as it goes down the ileum, absorb the nutrients off of it. And so how does it do that? Mainly with gastric juice. There's a little bit of churning in your stomach, a little bit of, everybody can feel their stomach working with the peristalsis that's happening in your stomach, but that's not really the main digestion in the stomach. The main digestion in the stomach is acid. It shoots pH of 2 point something or 3.2, something like that, at this food, and breaks these particles down. Breaks these particles into bigger particles, into their small little chemical building blocks, so that your intestine can then say, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that, leave that behind. Now, we talked about this before. We talked about epithelium. Why does the stomach not eat itself? Goblet cells. The stomach, every 5th or 6th cell in the stomach is, instead of it secreting gastric juice, is going to secrete mucus. It's going to secrete mucus that covers the sides of the stomach, so that not only are you constantly digesting the food that you're eating, but you're constantly digesting that mucus. That's why when you vomit, it's sticky and mucusy and nasty, because it's been in your stomach and picked up that mucus from your goblet cells. Okay? Now, if your goblet cells aren't working right, or if you have a infection, like it's called, I believe, Zollinger-Ellison syndrome is an infection with a certain type of bacteria that are going to attack goblet cells, then you actually do start digesting the wall of your stomach, and you create scars in the wall of your stomach. What do we call them?
Ulcers.
Yeah, ulcers. And that's just pretty much a little what do you call it when a meteor hits the earth? Crater. I'm having a real problem with words today, man. Something I blame.
That's why you're not able to see it.
I guess so. But yeah, it creates like a little crater of scar tissue in your stomach that can be painful. It can bleed. It can be all kinds of problems. But it's also a problem because it's part of your stomach now it's not working. So you end up with that positive feedback loop, much like our heart, where you have parts of the stomach that aren't working, and so your stomach's not working very well, and so you end up with your, you get bubblegum. All right, so we leave the stomach, and then we go to the small intestine, the most important organ for the digestive system, because it's the organ that's doing the absorption. It's the organ that's going to be absorbing your food. And it breaks down into three parts. First part of the small intestine is going to be the duodenum. And I'll throw a picture of this up on the board here in just a second. The duodenum is going to receive bile, pancreatic juice, and buffers low pH. Incredibly important anatomical landmark, incredibly important functional landmark, because everything's coming together, okay? We're talking stomach kind of begins oriented a little bit to your left. Stomach's going to end over here with the caloric sphincter. And right there, that little curve is the duodenum. Duodenum is close to the liver. It's close to the pancreas. It's close to the gallbladder. It's close to the stomach because it came from the stomach. And it's just an incredibly important anatomical landmark. One of the very first things you do when you cut the abdominal wall and go down into the abdomen is locate the duodenum. Because once you find that, you know, hey, if I got the duodenum, well, there's the liver right there. I could probably take the duodenum and reflect it back up and find the pancreas chilling underneath it. It's a very, very important anatomical landmark and an important functional landmark because so much crap is going on. So much crap is going on because you just left a place with a pH of 3. What's the first thing we need to do?
Get that pH up.
Get that pH back to normal, because you don't want acid running through your small intestine being absorbed into your body. So you got to buffer that pH. You got to buffer that low pH, get it back to normal. Pancreatic juice is going to finish up your digestion, and then bile is going to, we'll talk about this later on in a second, actually right here. Bile from the liver is a fat emulsifier. Now we need a quick little chemistry lesson to help us remind us about that emulsifier word. Anybody? Emulsification?
I remember the word.
Okay. Well, do you remember polarity? Do you remember why H2O is so important?
It's polar.
Because it's polar. Very good. You got oxygen, hydrogen, hydrogen. What type of bond? Come on.
Covalent.
Yeah. Sharing electrons, covalent bond, but it's not sharing the electrons equally. Oxygen's way bigger, it pulls the electrons more. So oxygen, since it pulls the electrons more, acts a little negative. And hydrogen, since it gets the electrons pulled away from it, acts a little positive. This is why water sticks together, because every little water molecule has a little negative end, a little positive end, and the water sticks together and to you. If you stick your finger in a glass of water and bring it up, have a little piece of water dangling off. Cohesion and adhesion. That's why that works. It's also why water is exceptional at dissolving things. It's exceptional at dissolving things as long as you have polarity. You put some salt in water, it's going to disappear. Because all the sodium particles roll up here to the oxygen, and all the chlorine particles roll up there to the hydrogen. The salt literally disappears. Now, is the salt still there? Absolutely. It's just dissolved into the water. It's mixed on a molecule level, on a molecular level, it's mixed into that water. Now, the problem comes, which instead of salt, we throw some methane into the water. It doesn't have a positive end, it doesn't have a negative end. It's nonpolar. You throw that in the water, what's going to happen? It's not going to mix with it. It's just going to be bubbles mixed in the water. Okay? And oils are nonpolar. Lots of things that we eat are nonpolar. Fats and oils and a lot of organic compounds are nonpolar. And so you need to be able to figure out a way to dissolve it and create this nice chyme that will be easy to dissolve. That's where bile comes in. For emulsification. Emulsification, bile is going to be, an emulsifier has one end that can grab water and one end that can grab an oil or a fat.
That's soap, basically, right?
So,
what it was.
Dawn,
Yeah.
Dawn dish soap is the classic example, because you see the water You get the greasy pan, you put some water in it, you see the grease and the water, you put a drop of Dawn, poof, it all disappears. It doesn't disappear, it just makes it so the water can dissolve the grease. Same thing is happening here. If you got somebody with gallbladder problems, what are they going to avoid eating? Fatty foods. Fatty, oily foods. Now, if you get the gallbladder taken out, usually what they do is they just give you a duct, a vial from your liver to your duodenum. So you're still making bile, you can still do it, you just can't do it fast. You just don't want to eat a big fatty meal because you can't keep up with it. Okay. All right. So duodenum, super important anatomical landmark. One of the first things we're going to do when we go to the abdomen is find the duodenum. Jejunum, not so important. Jejunum is just the next connection past that. Jejunum just takes us from the duodenum to the ileum. Ileum is where most of the nutrient storage is going to occur. In the ileum, this is where you're going to absorb your nutrients. This is where you're going to absorb your food. And this is all of the stuff in your abdomen. You see somebody cut open in a horror movie and they're standing there holding their guts. What you're seeing is ileum. All that stringy guts is ileum. Okay, let's take a look at this picture real quick of this. Wow, it's a good time to do that. We get a nice pretty picture. Pretty one here. Yeah. Cheap. It's not beautiful, but I like it. Sure. All right. So stomach, duodenum, it's right there. Duodenum is right there. And if your liver wasn't removed, it would be right here. Your pancreas is just kind of sneaking back here behind all this stuff. So we have our duodenum. Jejunum is going to kind of go back here behind the transverse colon. We'll talk about that in a second. Then you have all of this is ileum. All this little stuff. Why is it so long?
Because it can't, I guess, absorb the nutrients super fast. It has to have a lot of area to absorb them.
Efficiency. More surface area gives you more absorption. Not only that, not only is it long, but you also have these villi and microvilli on the surface in the small intestine that give you even more absorption. And I'm going to show you a picture of that as well.
Small intestine is about 22 feet on average.
There you go. And everybody always asks, everybody's like, when we're doing it in class, doing dissection, everybody always says, oh, can we pull it out and see if we can pull it out in 22 feet or whatever? It's stuck together too much with ligaments to do that. I mean, you'd have to be so careful. You could, but it would just take too much time. All right. You'll be able to sort of see this on the thing here. But so this is inside your small intestine. Inside your small intestine, you get these folds, these macroscopic folds. On these macroscopic folds, you have these villi, which are these little finger-like projections all over these folds. And then when you zoom in to the villi, individual cells have microvilli on them. So you get folds, little tiny fingers on the folds, and then little even tinier fingers on the individual villi. So it's all about maximizing surface area. It's all about having as much surface area as possible to get as much absorption as possible. Because we got to get those nutrients into the bloodstream because that's super important for keeping you alive.
Did the microvilli have even smaller?
No, this is one cell, so no. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that on a chemical level you get smaller than that, But yeah, okay. We're coming back to this picture, so we'll leave that one somewhere I can grab it. But yeah, that's the small intestine, most important digestive thing. We talked about the liver with the bile, and it's got the fat emulsifier, allows the fat and oils to be dissolved together. The pancreatic juices, the pancreas there, the pancreas' main job is to keep the body's sugar levels regulated, but then it also is going to have some chemicals, pancreatic juice that goes to the duodenum to help in digestion as well. All right, so we got food, we're done, except we need to do it again. And to do it again, we got to get our water back, because if you don't get your water back, you die, you get dehydrated. That's where you have the large intestine. The large intestine, all it's going to do, well, it's not draining the water, it's just getting pretty well, yeah, I guess it is draining all the water. It's pulling the water out of your products of digestion that did not get absorbed and saving that water to be used again. Okay, so it's just recycling, reabsorbing that water. It's going to start right here at the cecum. So we end our small intestine, and this connection here, which is another very, very important landmark, usually at the right lower quadrant of the abdomen, is the cecum. The cecum is where your small intestine ends and your large intestine begins, and it's also where you'll find the appendix. Appendix is that blind pouch that may or may not be vestigial. Some people argue that it does nothing. Some people argue that it still does have some immune system function. And then some people say that that is actually a relic that is similar to a bird's crop. A bird's crop that they have right now, they swallow rocks, it goes into the crop, and it helps them with physical digestion. Some people, some human evolutionary biologists think that the appendix might have been used 2 or 3 million years ago when our diets contained more dirt and rocks as kind of a place for the dirt and rocks to be further, processed for excretion. Whatever, but your appendix is right there. It's a blind pouch. Anytime you have a blind pouch anywhere in your body, you got to worry about what happening. What is a blind pouch? A pouch is just an area where you can go in.
Right.
A blind pouch is where there's only one way in and one way out. So a blind pouch, the appendix, it's easy for stuff to get in, but it's easy for stuff to stay in. And anytime you get something that stays there and doesn't leave, you got to worry about infection. And infection of your appendix can be a big problem, because if it gets so infected that it ruptures the wall of the appendix, now we have digestive products emptying into our abdomen.
You die.
There you go. Okay. So cecum, super important. Now, the cool thing about the large intestine is that it's pretty much named for what it's doing. So we're on the right lower quadrant here, the cecum. The very first thing the large intestine does is go up in the body, the ascending colon. Then it's going to take a hard right and be next to the liver. Anytime you have a word associated with liver, what's the word that anything's associated with liver? We use what word? Hepatic. This is the hepatic flexure. So the hepatic turn. And you have the transverse colon going across the body. Over here on this side of the body, it's not pictured. And in a cat, it's going to be much, much bigger. Important organ to the left of the stomach. The spleen. This is the splenic flexure. Then you have your descending colon. Now, this is where everything up to this point in the whole digestive system is almost identical for us and cats. Every little turn, even the appendix, you can find a little appendix on the cats. Okay, every little turn, everything it's doing is almost identical until right here, and it has to do with the shape of our bodies. Cats are long and skinny. We are short and stout. Okay, there you go. For a cat, this is just going to go kind of slowly, just go to the rectum. But in our body, our left lower quadrant is really out of place to the center of our body. And so you got to get this little curve called the sigmoid colon. Cats aren't going to have a sigmoid colon. They just don't. It's one of the things I learned. I had never dissected a cat until I did anatomy class. I was looking for a sigmoid colon, and I said, oh, there's no sigmoid colon. So cats don't have a sigmoid colon. You do. This S-shaped curve to get you from the left side of your body to the medial part of your body. Then you have the rectum. Purpose of the rectum is to store your feces. Purpose of the rectum is to store your feces until it's time for release. Why do we have a rectum? Why don't we just go whenever new feces is made, reaches the end of our large intestine, why don't we just release our body?
That'd be very, very inconvenient.
Will be very inconvenient, but you're thinking
like leaking poop all the time.
But you're thinking modern culture. And I don't mean why is it inappropriate for you to poop yourself in the middle
I'm
of
talking about like if you're asleep and you're just like leaking feces out of your butt while you're sleeping, and you're gonna wake up covered in feces, which is full of bacteria and stuff like that.
Very good, very good, very good, very good. There's also kind of not just when you're asleep. Why might it also be a problem? Why do you want to control where you poop? Well, let's say that you're always, let's forget sleeping, and let's say you're always kind of standing up and out of your droppings. Why would it still be a good idea to control where you poop? Because what else do you do that you don't want to get poop involved with?
Eating?
Yeah, you don't want to poop where you eat. Okay, and pretty much any organism that
That goes back to it has a lot of bacteria in it, doesn't it?
yeah, and pretty much any organism that can afford a rectum has one. Even your things like reptiles and amphibians have a cloaca that will hold back feces because they don't want to eat where they poop. Okay, birds, no rectum. Why?
Because they're flying.
Can't afford it. Can't afford the weight. They can't afford the weight, and that's why when you go to flightless birds, when you go to their nesting grounds, covered in poop. It's the only animals in the world that poop where they have babies, but because they can't control it. That's another story there. But luckily, we have a nice, pretty anal sphincter. Anal sphincter, one of the coolest sphincters in your whole body, because it does lots of different things. It is very, very similar to our deglutition, our swallowing. The anal sphincter is both voluntary and involuntary. The top portion of the anal sphincter is smooth muscle. It's involuntary. It allows feces to kind of get to the point where it's knocking on the door. Then you have the voluntary portion of our anal sphincter that, thank goodness for it. But then we all know, based upon the pressure of our involuntary portion, sometimes that voluntary portion loses the battle. And that's why, it's important to have, lots of fluid reabsorption so that you don't end up with loose stools. Another cool thing about the anal sphincter, I don't know if I probably told y'all before, I had a pathology teacher who was obsessed with, not pathology, histology teacher, who was obsessed with the anal sphincter. He did a whole 90-minute class on the anal sphincter. Okay. And his obsession, the biggest obsession was it had the sensory, we don't give credit to our anal sphincter because of how much it can sense. Like we think about our mouth, man, we're sensing like crazy. You understand that. If you have gas in your mouth, you know what it feels like. If you have water in your mouth, you know what it feels like. If you have solids in your mouth, you know what it feels like. You can taste with your mouth. You have taste buds. Pretty much all of those things are also in the anal sphincter. You think about it.
Taste?
Even taste to some extent. Okay? There are.
Was he talking about like putting stuff in there?
That'd be part of it, because obviously most of the sensation that we have in our anal sphincter is feces, and we're not thinking about what it tastes like. But they have done studies where they have given enemas of certain things, and the person who was taking the enema got to the point where they could tell when it was something different. But we all, even without the taste part of it, we all know that we're pretty good at telling whether or not our rectum is full of solid, liquid, or gas. And sometimes
gas and solid does get confused.
sometimes gas and liquid might get confused a little bit, or gas and solid, and you have a little mistake. But that's the digestive system, guys. I wasn't planning on doing everything today, but we talked fast and we listened fast, and we got to the end. Rock and roll?
Yep.
Questions on anything?
Test tomorrow?
No, we're not really doing a test.
No test at all?
We'll see what we're doing tomorrow. I'm not really sure what we're doing tomorrow. But then Friday, I definitely want to talk about our dissection. We might do a little bit more introduction to dissection tomorrow as well. Rock and roll?
Yep.
All right. Bye-bye to the Zoom. Mackenzie was with us a little bit, but she left us.
I'll go bathroom.
Sure.